Okay, welcome everyone to the meeting. Just to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. Okay, great. All right, that sounds better. Okay, let's move to item 1, which is apologies. Have there been any apologies or members joining remotely?
No, Chair, no apologies today.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest? Can't see any. So item 3, we go to the minutes and ask if any matters arising from points of accuracy. Okay, then I propose the minutes are adopted as a correct record. And I'm asking for a seconder, and then we'll have a show of hands.
Chair, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Bidwell. All those in favour? Okay, minutes are adopted. I'll sign those at the end of the meeting. Item 4, urgent items of business. I've been informed, as you've seen from the agenda and the report, we're going to have an update from our external auditors on the progress of the audit for the year end 24-25, and that's been added to the agenda. Okay, and on that note, I'd like to welcome Duncan and Adam from our external auditors to the meeting. Okay, let's move to item 5, scheme of public participation. I'm going to ask the Borough Solicitor, Sandy Prashat, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. The schemes of public participation were brought to this committee, as you will recall, in December and were ostensibly agreed. There was one outstanding issue which we weren't able to resolve online. So as you recommended, we bring the item back for resolution of that specific point. And the specific point is that we are proposing 4 different schemes of public participation to be introduced after the next annual council meeting. One of those schemes is in relation to cabinet meetings and committee meetings. And the issue which was raised by one of your number, if I recall correctly, Councillor Allen, was which committees would it relate to? And it was a justifiable point because that hadn't been specified in the document. What I have been able to clarify since then, and I've introduced it in the slightly amended version of the paper on page 14. At the bottom of page 14, you'll see highlighted in red that I've included reference there to the committees in question. So Employment Committee and Governance and Audit Committee have been specifically referenced. As we know, the Planning Committee and Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Licensing Committee are covered by other schemes, so those won't be taken into account in relation to this particular scheme. So that's all I really wanted to say. We did go through the report last time. It's just a question of members deciding whether or not they agree with the recommendation in its current form. In other words, whether they want the scheme to be extended to the Employment Committee and or the Governance and Audit Committee or not, as the case may be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members? Councillor Allen.
I do have concerns about the Employment Committee allowing public participation because it's so, the idea that, employment is so based in law and stuff like that, any member of the public can then start asking questions about or making suggestions. I think it just seems daft that we should have public participation at the Employment Committee. I'm not a great fan of governance and audit either, but it just seems employment seems daft.
And Councillor Bidwell.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I would have thought there was some sort of GDPR consequence of having the public involved in employment matters that are pertinent to the council. I don't know whether that's no.
Chair, if I may, yes, there would be, but we would keep those items exempt. And clearly, when questions come in, if the item related to specific individuals, then clearly we would not allow the scheme to extend to those situations. I think the intention would be only in relation to general policies and procedures that the committee was receiving for confirmation and acceptance.
Councillor Frost.
Oh, thank you. Could I ask if any member of the public has attempted or approached to question or participate in the employment or governance and audit committees before the introduction of these schemes, or was it not possible to make such an approach before these?
The answer to that is no. Currently, the only schemes we have are fragmented, and they relate to one council, 2 licensing and safety committee, 3 health and wellbeing board, 4 planning committee, and 5 overview and scrutiny commission. So currently, we don't have anything that covers either employment or governance and audit. We did do a sample of other authorities' websites and some benchmarking. What I was able to establish was that certainly a number of the Berkshire authorities do allow schemes for all committees. I think Wokingham, Windsor and Maidenhead and Reading do. That's not the case with West Berkshire Council, where they only allow it for specific committees, but it's entirely to your discretion, Chair, as to what approach you prefer to take.
Okay, so my own view on this, I do understand the points raised by members. These are open meetings, they're recorded, put up on YouTube, etc. Now, while I can't think of instances where members of the public would want to come and speak under what circumstances, I think it communicates that we have an open, democratic process, which is consistent across all our public-facing meetings. So I would support the recommendation, although I note the concerns of members. Okay, so I think we need to put this one to a vote. I'm going to ask if I'm going to propose the recommendation, which is 2.1. Council approves the adoption of the following schemes of public participation inclusion in the Constitution. I'm not going to read all the rest of the words there, and that this council approves the commencement of the implementation of schemes from the 13th of May this year. I'm going to ask for a seconder.
Chair, I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bidwell. So by a show of hands, can we vote on the recommendation? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, I believe that's carried. Thank you very much, members. That was a robust and interesting debate on that matter. Let's move to item 6. So the mid-year review and report for 26-27 from Treasury Management. I'm going to ask Stuart McKellar, Head of Finance, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair, but I will hand over to Calvin Orr, who's the Head of the Assistant Director for Finance and Business Services, who oversees the Treasury Management function, so he's best placed to talk you through this. Thank you, Calvin.
Yeah, my apologies, Carl. I'm just reading off my script here.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is the annual report that we bring to Governance and Audit. The Council is legally obligated to abide by the Local Government Act and have regard to CIPFA codes in relation to treasury management, and this report fulfills that. What you have in your report is a mid-year position, 3/4 of the way through the year, but that's just the way it falls. And also the treasury management strategy that we published for consultation in December with the budget papers. And what's before yourselves tonight is to review these and recommend it to the council for approval. Treasury management strategy sets out the frameworks for borrowing and investments and cash flow and managing these following our professional standards. Tonight, the Governance and Audit Committee is to scrutinise the strategy, ensuring transparency and alignment with the Council's objectives. So there's a commentary on the last sort of 6 to 9 months, so the current progress in the year, highlights specific areas around interest rates, what's happening in the markets more broadly, and updates members on our current position with our investments and our debt. And I'm pleased to say that there's been no breaches of our treasury or prudential limits to date this year. It sets out our level of borrowing and the rates that we're borrowing at, and that's a mixture of short-term and long-term borrowing, and also highlights the investments that we hold currently and the rate that we're achieving. I'm pleased to say that we are beating our benchmark, which is the overnight SONIA. It outlines where those investments are. We are invested 100% in AAA money market funds that offer the highest level of security, matching with a reasonable yield. Our investment strategy hasn't changed in quite some years, primarily as a factor of the available cash that we have. Treasury function is now really about investing any surplus working capital, but to ensure that we minimise borrowing, but we have enough cash to pay the bills. So again, we set out that within the report. Short-term borrowing is increasing, as it always does at this part of the financial year. So we will see borrowing rise in the last 2 months of the financial year. That's primarily a result of the fact that we don't get council tax and business rates in the last 2 months. Most of our payers choose to pay over the 10 months. So we see a big reduction in cash inflow. And obviously some government grants are short funded as well. But the report sets out our overall position mid-year. The strategy, again, sets out both our investment strategy for the year 26-27 and also our borrowing strategy. What I would say is that we continue to be very risk averse and take a very cautious borrowing approach, in line with what's happening in the markets as well. So we always have an eye to see what's going on. What that is emphasising is that we are borrowing short term. We are in an environment of falling interest rates. So we don't particularly want to be borrowing out long. So we're keeping any borrowing that we are doing 3, 6, 9 months at the very maximum. And we continue to invest only in our AAA rated money market funds. That gives us instant access, i.e. I can get the money back tomorrow. That has worked very well for us, and the fact that we're beating the benchmark is very helpful. Creditworthiness, again, we're purely invested in AAA money market funds. We don't have the cash to start looking to put money elsewhere, and so our creditworthiness assessment hasn't changed, but it doesn't impact on what we do on a day-to-day basis. Attached to the report is also an annex on the local climate bond initiative that we felt might be useful to bring to you this evening. We are in the process of setting that up, and I know there were some questions around how it operates, what risk is involved, and the mechanics of it. I hope that the report I've included tonight may answer some of those questions, but we are in the process of setting up the bond, which primarily will start with identifying schemes that we believe that investors will be interested in investing in, and will also give us a return on our investment so that we can pay out the interest on that bond. I haven't got any more to say at the moment. I'm sure there may be a lot of questions, but suffice to say that this report is very similar to the previous year's report. Our strategy hasn't changed. Liquidity and our security is still our number one goal in all that we do in Treasury. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for the report. Questions from members? Councillor Bidwell.
Yeah, thanks for that. Quite clear, and obviously the prudent nature of the investment is, given where we are, is very commendable. But my question is very simple. It's about the bond. When do you think the scheme will be ready to be launched?
Chair, I'm happy to come in on this if that would help. So the scheme will be launched through an organisation called Abundance. They have supported other local authorities to put in place climate bonds. So they issue bonds on behalf of different councils every quarter. So that's in June, September, December, and March. Clearly, now we are unlikely to get to a position where we can put a climate bond in place in March. There just isn't time to do that. So we'll be targeting June. But as Calvin has said, that's dependent on us identifying schemes which are going to be attractive to investors and which will generate the return to actually repay the amount which we'll need to do to the investors. So at the moment, we don't have a number of shovel-ready schemes like that. So at which point we do have those, that's when we will launch the bond. We can't launch the bond without knowing what the schemes will be.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from members? Okay, we have Councillor Haffajee online. Your question, please.
I believe Councillor Zodine was before me.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Councillor Haffajee. Through you, Chair, my question is, if interest rates remain higher for longer, what contingency is built into the strategy?
So because I guess we are taking a macro view of the economy at the minute. So we are in a period of lowering interest rates across the world, really. But should we identify that we believe interest rates are starting to rise, and we'll see that in the longer dated maturities, so something like the 25 or 50-year gilt, then we would look to change our strategy and start borrowing at longer maturity levels. It's a slightly double-edged sword, obviously. We have the rising interest rates, we benefit from our investment returns, but we obviously have more borrowed than we have out on investments. So we would look to adapt our strategy, and we do that. I review our treasury position on a monthly basis. We have treasury advisors that we speak to. I keep an eye on markets basically every morning to see what the latest chatter is. It's always difficult at this time of the year because liquidity is becoming more of an issue for local authorities rather than sort of the global trends. But yeah, we would adapt our strategy, and if we believe interest rates are rising or staying higher than we thought, then we may look to lock in some longer matured lending.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haffajee now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the annex on the local climate bond. It's quite good. A couple of questions on that. I understand we don't have the projects yet, but when the eligible projects do start appearing, where would one be able to find the list of those? And also, could you tell us a little bit more about the options and process for if a proposed bond does not reach its full subscription amount? Thanks.
Do you want me to start?
I'm happy.
Okay.
So yeah, and there will be visibility because all the schemes will have to be approved. We expect to bring them forward on an investor safe basis. The corporate management team has authority to approve investor save capital schemes, but given the interest that there is in the particular projects that may be funding from a local climate bond, we will look to bring it through a cabinet report so there is availability, visibility, and we need to ensure that we do that because the council needs to be comfortable that the schemes are the right ones and supportive of the launch of the climate bond. So therefore we need to make sure that we have comms in place to make investors who might be interested aware of it. I'm not aware, Councillor Hafford, that there has been problems in other councils around achieving the full amount of bonds which have been put out, but I'm happy to take that away as a question and put it to Abundance and provide you an answer in due course, if that's okay.
Super, thanks.
Okay, so I'm just looking around. There's a few people online.
I have a question.
Councillor Zuhariddin, please.
Through you, Chair. Looking at our current investment portfolio, what stress testing has been done to assess resilience under a credit event?
Okay. In terms of stress testing it, understanding the AAA money market fund, so we only invest one with obviously AAA money market funds. There are a wide range of money market funds available in the market. We are limited to those AAA rated funds. They are instant access, so again we can withdraw the money at any point, at any time. That begs the question: what if they close the fund due to risk factors or whatever? Then yeah, the world is in a terrible place, I think, at that point. But again, when we look at the funds that we do invest in, we invest in only the largest money market funds that are open to local authorities that give access to it. So you can see the range of funds that we have are the likes of BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche, Federated. So these are funds with well in excess of about $400 billion and sterling in their different funds. So these are significant financial investments, and again we rely on the fact that these are the largest AAA funds available to us and sanctioned under our investment criteria.
Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, just following on from what Councillor Darragh said, you could buy insurance to cover for the risk, couldn't you?
We could do. I mean, we wouldn't choose to. I don't think. I think given the ratings and the investments that these large pool of funds invest in, and the liquidity that we have in that, then insurance would be an additional cost that we wouldn't seek to enter into. But yeah, those facilities are available should we wish to do that. But it's not something we've considered as a council. We invest very small amounts compared to the fund. Our holdings are in the region of 5 decimal places of each individual fund. We are very, very small, but I take the point.
Okay, so just looking, quite a few people online, so I'm just checking. I can't see any further questions there. So to summarise, Brecon Forest Council is taking a very prudent approach here. A greater return, I guess, could be earned, but then that would be greater risk, and that would then not be in line with the prudent policies. But thank you very much for the questions from members. I think very pertinent. So if no further questions, I'd like to move the recommendation. Point 1, that the committee reviews the Treasury Management Report for 26-27 as attached in Annex A and recommends to the Council for approval, amended as necessary by the Executive Director. Do I have a seconder?
Mr. Chair, happy to second.
Thank you. So all those in favour, please show your hands. Okay. Only those in the council chamber can vote, of course. Thank you. Right, moving on to item 7. This is a report on internal audit. And I'm going to ask Head of Internal Audit, Sally Hendrick, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my report this evening on the internal audit activity for the year to date, but focusing in particular on the activity since September, which is when I provided my last report to the Audit Committee. If I may, I'll draw your attention to section 3.3, page 80, which sets out the position on the audit plan and shows that at the point when we were drafting this report to present to the Audit Committee tonight, we had roughly about 29% of audits that we hadn't yet started. So we were roughly on track with a quarter of the year yet to do, with 1 quarter remaining. And I'm pleased to say we've already started 2 more of those audits, so we're well progressed against the plan and making good progress, which is a reflection of having a full complement in the in-house team. I'd also like to draw your attention to the table below that, which shows a summary of the outcomes of the audit to date. And this indicates that there is improvement on previous years, which is very good news. So we can see here that we have 10 good and satisfactory opinions already, whereas last year we only had 4 in total. So we're making very good progress. We've also got a lot less, or a lot fewer memos that we're issuing, which are generally around follow-ups and advisory reports. We've got a lot less of those with major recommendations than we've had last year. So overall, I would say we're seeing an improvement against the position we were seeing in 24-25. Below that, I've included a summary of those areas where we have carried out audits and identified significant issues and raised either critical or major recommendations. So we just have a number of audits that we're flagging up to you here. And I wasn't proposing to go through any of these in any detail, but the first one is around the education, transport and fleet procurement team. We've got a couple of critical recommendations on this one. And because they're critical, I've just noted here that we've already identified that action is being addressed, in particular to address those particular weaknesses that were identified, and those are progressing well. The second one here is health and safety, and this is where we raised one major recommendation, which was around the incident reporting and the management of those cases, and really looking to see greater evidence on those incidents being investigated and lessons being learned from those, and that's why we raised a major recommendation on that. The third area that we've looked at is the service that provides the assessment of the applications for deprivation of liberties. This isn't in any way saying that we found any incidents of cases of liberty being deprived from people inappropriately. This really focuses on issues that we've identified with delays in the process for assessing the applications, and that is a nationwide problem. It's a national problem, which is really down to the process that's involved, the national process that's in place. So that was the key issue around that we found there. To address those difficulties that the team has in trying to meet the deadlines, what they did was they put in a process of risk rating the applications to try and focus on those more urgent and higher priority cases. So we found that was probably not being evidenced as well as it should. And then we also found a couple of other areas around the checks that were being done on the qualifications and the documents for the assessors and other specialists such as doctors. And we also found some issues around the delays in the approval for urgent application extensions. So this is just a number of areas that we found. Coincidentally, I did actually meet with the Assistant Director for Commissioning about another matter this afternoon, and she was saying that with some of these issues that we found here, they were down to resourcing, and she was saying to me that they have now got agreement to get more resources in, which will help them on an administrative side and enable them to make improvements. So that's already evidence of them progressing steps to address those issues that we found. The next couple of areas are where we raised satisfactory opinions on the audits, but we found some isolated issues that we just wanted to raise, where we'd raised a major recommendation. So the first one is on the family hubs that we have around the council on a number of sites, and we found that there were improvements to be made on the arrangements they have with third-party hirers, and in particular, I think the issue here was around the fact that they needed to make sure that those hirers had got public liability insurance in place. And then the last one was around the Mosaic finance module. The Mosaic system is the system that we use in the children's social services arena, and a finance module had been put in place for that. We found during the audit that there was no evidence that any post-implementation review had been carried out to check that all the objectives of the project had been addressed, and that everything was working appropriately. So that's why we've raised just a major recommendation on that specific area. The rest of the audit didn't identify any significant issues. So that's the areas that we focused on there. I just wanted to also raise around the update on audit recommendations. As you know, we have in the past found some challenges with getting audit recommendations implemented, and a new tracker has been put in place. So we're waiting for updates to the tracker now. Management have been asked across the council to provide updates on the recommendations that are set out in the reports given to them, and they need to provide those updates so that we can then give you an update on that information that's being put into the tracker at the next committee meeting in March. The next area I just wanted to focus on is the delays that we are currently experiencing with getting management responses to the audit reports. They generally are about 6 weeks now, which is a longer period of time than the target we have of 3 weeks, but is acceptable, I think, given that officers are under a lot more resource pressure than they would have been in the past. But we do have a number of areas where audits are taking it's taking a lot longer for management to get back to us on those audit reports, to let us know what actions they're going to be taking and agree responses to the audit reports. So in some cases, they're in excess of 19 weeks, which isn't really acceptable, because during that time, if it could well mean that those matters are going unaddressed, those significant weaknesses, and we want to make sure that where we are raising weaknesses in our internal audit reports, that they are being addressed on a timely basis. It also potentially has a knock-on effect for my annual opinion, because where we have audit reports where we have issued partial or inadequate assurance opinions, we would ideally like to go back before the end of the year to get some assurance that those matters are being addressed and those weaknesses and risks are reducing. And we're not able to do that if it's taking months and months to get those audit reports agreed. I have discussed this with CMT, and directors are already taking steps to raise this with their assistant directors and the need to make improvements. And we have agreed at CMT, I agreed that we will increase the time frame. So we will increase the time frame for most audits from 3 weeks to 4 weeks. And then for the more complex audits, which are straddling more than one directorate or more than one department, which inevitably take much longer to try and agree, we're going to be setting the target for 6 weeks. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, so you can see the potential impact for the knock-on for the plan, because it does also have the effect of putting pressure on our own resources, where we're having to go back and chase and have more and more meetings to try and get management responses to the reports. I would also say as well that we are not in the position where they're not getting back to us because they don't agree with the reports. There aren't any where they're disputing any of these issues that we're raising. It's just delays in actually sitting down and getting those responses back to us. So I think those were the key things really that I just wanted to flag up in my report, and I'm very happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Okay, questions, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Sally. So do you have any concerns? I mean, I think it's been a while since we've had any inadequates. Do you have any concerns that you found 2 inadequate areas this year, and how do you think that's going to affect your overall opinion for the year?
Yes, we I mean, we do on and off have these inadequate opinions with one of them in particular. Well, actually, with both of them, they were requests from management to carry out these audits. One of them, which is the around the education transport, they were aware that there were significant issues, and even by the stage that we were issuing the draft report, they'd already put a clear action plan in place to address those. And I will go back towards the end of the year in a couple of months' time to see how those are going. So I feel confident that we certainly have an action plan in place to try and address those and move them forward. That was the earlier one that we did, the home to school transport one. The other one is health and safety in a client-facing environment, and we will again go back towards the end of the year. So I will get my team to go back and have a look to see what progress has been made. But I don't expect it will have a hugely adverse impact on my opinion, because it's just the 2 areas, and certainly with the education one, I'm very confident that that's all on track, and they have got a plan to take that forward and make the necessary improvements.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. When you talk about increasing the time frame, are you confident that increasing the time frame for responding to your report will make a difference to the backlog?
I think it's just being realistic about what people can achieve, actually, and actually showing management that we are aware of the pressures that they're under, so that we are working with them, because we very much do try to promote that we are a service for management. So I think that's what we want to do. We want to be seen to be reasonable and not set unrealistic targets about how long we think they should be able to take to get these things back to us. So we're just trying to be realistic, I think, and I don't think it's going to make much difference just extending the target. What is going to make a difference is having buy-in from CMT, from the directors, to actually take this forward and monitor it and make sure that their teams and their assistant directors are on top of this and not taking long periods of time to respond to things, especially where we're raising significant weaknesses, where you would want to see those ones in particular addressed on a timely basis. So I think I am hopeful. Well, I'm confident, actually. I would say I'm confident that we are going to make improvements on that. And I don't think changing the target time frame will have any adverse impact.
I have a recommendation that is maybe to put in the target of the assistant director that they should complete the audit within their performance year, and that could help get them to focus on getting it delivered.
Well, I mean, quite often the audits will be completed towards the end of the year, and they do straddle over the year. So that, I suppose, I think I'd probably find it more effective to have a sort of individual time frame for them to respond to the actual draft reports themselves. There are lots of different factors that can impact on the delivery of audits. You can have people going on long-term sick when you're going to audit them. All sorts of things can arise during the course of an audit. Say, for example, as well, we had last autumn become aware that we were going to have an inspection on the children's services side, which meant that audits that we were due to undertake had to then be deferred and delayed. So to sort of set targets about what's going to be delivered, it might be quite hard for us to actually try and to stick to that. And we need to be, I think, realistic about what's achievable in the climate that we're working in, because a lot of teams are under a lot of resource pressure.
Okay, looking online, I can see a question from Councillor Zuhruddin.
Yes, Chair. Given that 3 weeks is a reasonable response time, and delays longer than 6 weeks seems to be completely unreasonable. This is a process question I have. Can this committee recommend that assistant directors work with managers to address and reduce these delays? Is this something as a committee we can do as a recommendation?
I think what we could do, and what I would be intending to do with CMT, is to provide more monitoring information, perhaps on every few weeks, where we're getting any difficulties. I will feed back to Stuart, and he can, as Section 151 officer, so that when he attends CMT, he can raise any particular concerns around where we're starting to get delays, so we can try and nip that in the bud, so we can try and resolve that at the CMT level. And then if there continues to be a problem, then I will start providing more detail to the Governance and Audit Committee on where these delays are arising, and if it's particular departments and sections, and if we got in that situation, then I think then the sort of support of the Audit Committee would be very welcome. But I'm confident that we won't get in that situation, because I think now the executive directors are on board with this, and it was largely probably something they were unaware of, but now they're aware of it. I'm confident that we can try and get those delays down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bidwell.
Yeah, following on from my colleagues' comments, can we concentrate on the service area that's delayed its response by over 19 weeks, so we can at least see some progress on that one? And I think there is, on the delays, a narrative about why, because obviously we understand that there will be circumstances, the children's services one being a very good example, where the internal audit can't take precedence over that, but we would like to see visibility of that so that we can make a recommendation as to how to escalate this.
I did get an update on that today, actually just this afternoon, from the assistant director, who said that they'd now progressed that, and that was now with her, and they were awaiting some input from another director, actually, and they are hoping to get that in the next week. And I will talk to the relevant director from the other directorate to try and make sure that actually happens, so we can actually get that audit finalised and completed, because it is, and I think everyone accepts that it's just unacceptable to have such lengthy delays on an audit report.
So just following up on that, so this committee has brought parts of the council to the committee to report on progress. Remember, I think we looked at business resilience planning last time. So really an open question. So this area that's delayed by 19 weeks, do you think we should be asking them to come to the committee next time?
Yep.
I wouldn't at this stage. I think it's something I need to discuss with the Executive Director of Resources about how we address the issues that are coming out of it, because they're sort of wider issues that come through in other audits as well. So I think, if I may, I would leave that for the moment, and if I discuss it with the Section 151 so we can think through what the best approach is on that.
Okay, so could you have a look at that and then make a report to the chair in time for the next meeting? Stuart.
If I may, Chair, I think as an interim step, you could ask Sally to write to councils when the response has been provided to the audit, and just an indication of is it a satisfactory response that's been provided as an interim step.
Yes, that's what I mean. Just to report to us. We don't lose any more time on.
I mean, what I would say, it was quite a complex area. It should theoretically be a simple area, but it isn't actually. It's quite a complex area that the audit is on, covering a number of different departments. And I think that adds to the complexity of it, and about ownership for taking responsibility for it. So I will certainly provide an update to you on as soon as we've actually got that report finalised. But it is an area that I think we need to focus on in the future, and we will be making sure we build that into the plan for 26-27.
Okay, so just following up, just to make clear on our process. So the tracker would have, I assume, please correct me if I'm wrong on this one, the recommendations for change. Is that what's the purpose of the tracker would be? And can you just tell us, why is the tracker not being implemented? We put a lot of emphasis on this at least 2 meetings ago.
Yes, the tracker is has been implemented, and it is in place. The reports are available for the DMTs to look at. The individual departments need to make sure that they put their updates into the tracker, and I've sent out emails to all of those areas where the recommendations are showing outstanding, asking them to provide updates to the tracker and make sure they get into the tracker by mid-February, so we can get a better view on where we are with the audit recommendations. So that means that by the time we come back to the audit committee in March, we should have a report for you. The digital services team is also they have already got reports in place for the DMTs, for the directorates, but they need to produce a report that summarises the information for CMT and for the Governance and Audit Committee, and it's that report that hasn't yet been done. Not that has caused any delay, because we're still waiting for the updates to get into the tracker from the officers on the recommendations that have been assigned to them. But that is now all in progress, just to assure you. So we do have that on board now, and all the audits that were previously not entered onto the system from earlier years have now all been entered onto the system. So we've done that now.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the software has been implemented, but in terms of population of data, we're still not complete there, and that you're going to make a report at the next committee meeting as to the status of that tracker and its completeness. Is that right?
Not quite. The population of audits is all on the tracker now. It's just the latest updates on the position on each individual audit recommendation. So managers need to go into the tracker to enter what the position is on each recommendation, to show whether they've been implemented, whether they're still in progress, whether they've not been started. It's that information that is not on the system at the moment. We need the latest position on it. Some of those audits are very new, because they've only just been put on this, or they've only just been carried out. Some of them, the audits were completed a few months ago, but the implementation target dates might well be the end of March, so we wouldn't expect them to be completed by now. But we are trying to make sure that managers now are providing an update on where exactly they are at the moment, so that we can report back in March or I can come back in March on the update. And then what I will do for my annual report is I will get them to update that again in around April time or May time, so we can get the latest position to inform my annual report as well when it comes to the audit committee in June. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance that we're now more on track than perhaps I indicated when we had we met the other day, the chair and the vice chair and I, that we're in a better position than I indicated the other day. So we are now more progressed. So I hope that gives you some assurance on that, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the updates that managers provide for us, and hopefully we will be able to get everyone to do that and get on board with it, and then we'll be able to have some detailed reports for you in March, setting out exactly where we are on what has been done and what hasn't.
So I'm sure you're picking up that from this committee we're concerned about delays and things getting done. So at the next committee meeting, if you could make a more detailed report on state of the tracker, any delays, so we're fully appraised of how our processes are working. Another question. So we had the business resilience team come and report to the council last time. Do you have an update on how they're getting on and when they'll be reporting again to the committee?
My understanding was that they were going to come back to report to you in March. I have asked them as part of this general exercise to provide updates on audit recommendations to actually update the tracker as well for where they are with their recommendations. But as far as I know, they are progressing against the plan that they had in place when they came to see you in November. And they, I think, are providing a separate update to you in March.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just looking online. I can't see any hands raised. Okay, well, thank you, members. Thank you for the reports. We don't have to vote on this one. We just need to record that the report has been read, discussed, and we noted the report. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to move to the extra item, which is a report on the external audit. And I'm going to ask Stuart to introduce, please.
Chair, I think I will hand straight over to KPMG to do it. It is their report. Clearly, members will have noted that the report was only added to the agenda last evening, so I would understand if some councillors may have some questions around just understanding some of the information that there hasn't been a lot of time to digest.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Stuart. First, apologies for the timing of this report. It was entirely our fault. We were late in drafting the report and didn't leave enough time for both internal review or review by management, which clearly isn't good enough. We have agreed with management that we will administer a much stricter reporting timetable, so the corporate management team will get a chance to review our reports before they come to committee. So this will not happen in the future. That being said, it is a very positive report, I'm pleased to say. Notwithstanding, we are obviously impacted by the building back assurance work that is required to be undertaken over the next few months, and the impact of the backstop implementation that we are still in. Having said that, we are very close to completing all of the work that we intended to complete for 24-25, including all of the work on the significant risk areas which we report in the audit plan to say that they were going to be the specific areas of audit focus. We have also completed the work on what is our poorly named value for money conclusion, which has concluded that there are no significant weaknesses that we're required to report in our auditor's annual report, which is a fantastic result. What this report does do is go through a bit more detail about
the findings to date against each of the significant risk areas that we wanted to report back to the committee on. I'll pass over to Adam to take you through the details of that testing and where we are with that.
Thank you. So looking at our significant risks, and if we start with page 10 of the pack, page 8 of the report, the first risk that we had flagged as a significant risk was that around valuation of land and buildings. We are pleased to report that our work in this area is fully complete. We've used next our own internal valuation specialist to challenge and assess the work of your own valuers. As far as land and buildings are concerned, we've had no issues. We are happy that the valuation is materially correct and have no concerns there of any materiality at all. Moving down onto the valuation of investment property, a very similar risk, but just looking at a different balance in the financial statements. Similar approach, but slightly different findings here. So we have had some differences in opinion on what are the appropriate assumptions to be used around some of the assets, specifically the benchmarks used to determine the yield that is used in the calculation, and also in a very limited instance of one item, the floor space that was used as well. We are currently in discussions with management, and they are discussing it with their valuers, Wilks and Neve, over that valuation. So if it were to be accepted, it would be an overstatement of 11.5 million, but that is currently in discussion and in further investigation on that point. But that is value as it is currently quantified. We've then got valuation of post-retirement benefits, so the pension side. Again, all work here is complete, subject to some final documentation points. We did identify some minor disclosure changes that were required to the accounts. That is not uncommon. In fact, I'd say on the majority of audits, we will find something where we think the disclosures can be slightly tightened, especially on pensions, and they're mainly around sector-wide issues rather than specific things for the council. The values themselves we've had no concerns with, and as I said, that work there is complete, subject to some final documentation and review points. And the final significant risk area is over management override controls. This is a mandatory risk that is included on all audits and simply reflects the fact that management may be in a position to override controls or coerce other members of staff into posting journals or similar that aren't appropriate. We have one minor area of this where we're still ongoing our work. That should finish soon. But as of yet, we have found no issues. We found no indicators of any management override. We found no indicators of bias in assumptions you're using or the policies you apply in your accounts either. So overall, a very positive finding on that matter. Moving down to the value for money report side of things. As Duncan said, this is a poorly worded area. The title is not ours, but if we're required to use, it has little to do with actual value for money, more to do with the arrangements you have in place and how you manage the council operations. We had two risks in this, which we identified and reported in our annual audit report earlier in the year. The first one is around budgetary management procurement, and that's on page 21 of the pack. We've noted our findings that I think it was 2 years ago now, internal audit found some concerns in this area and made some recommendations. Those are still being worked through. We are aware that this year's budgeting process, which is ongoing now, has had some different more robustness, maybe more support added in to support budget holders and support new officers and staff posts as well. As a result of that, we haven't raised any recommendations here. We are just noting here that those recommendations were still in the process of being fully implemented at the point of this report, but we found no concerns and no weaknesses to report on that matter. Over the page, we then talk about social care provision, including SEND, and we note that while, as always, you've had, and as all councils, SEND and social care is a challenging area. It is an area where costs are, in some ways, outside of your control and are often ramping up faster than funding is. But you have processes in place and you are working well with your local partners to deliver the best services you can. We also note that, like many authorities, you have a deficit on your dedicated schools grant, but that you have a plan in place to do that. Part of that is through the safety valve mechanism, but also partly through some dedicated reserves you've put aside to help fund that as well. So you have a plan in place to address that deficit and to try and resolve it, which is a key thing for us. So again, no weaknesses there. If I just flip back up 2 pages, on page 18 to 21, 20 of the pack, we have made some general observations around areas where internal audit had found non-compliance with laws and regulations. One of those was covered in today's update from internal audit, and that's the educational transport area. The other one was earlier on in the year, and that was around working time regulation requirements in duty service staff. Both of those areas have action plans in place already, which you are currently working through, and therefore, again, we've raised no weaknesses, no concerns, but we note them in here for completeness. The rest of the report talks through the details of some of the specific matters. So we've got in there again the audit adjustments. We mentioned that on page 29, we've got the adjustment for the investment property if it were to be agreed. And on the page before that, page 28, this one's worth mentioning, I think. During the year, you did receive during the year, you have recognised the receipt, of a donated asset, specifically Buckler's Park Community Hub. When we looked at the supporting documentation for that, it actually occurred that it had been received in the year before, but that finance had not been notified of that fact, and therefore they could not account for it. The value is 7.6 million. That should have been accounted for in 23-24, but was not. We do not deem it to be qualitatively material to the accounts to warrant an adjustment to the prior year and to reopen the accounts that were closed and has already been audited. So we're leaving that there as not to be corrected because we don't think it's qualitatively important and wouldn't have an impact on the readers of the accounts. They wouldn't change what they would think out how the council performed in that year. And then finally, in terms of controlled efficiencies, we've raised no recommendations this year. Two of the recommendations from prior year we have closed off completely, and that is around the review of assets and construction and the identification of internal recharges to make sure they're not being double counted in income expenditure. The final recommendation from last year, the journal's review process, we've noted has not been resolved, but we are not raising it again because the council has determined that they are happy with the risk in place, and they determine that the approach they've taken, which is to not approve all journals under £50,000, is appropriate for the council's risks and operations, and we've accepted that, so we're not raising that again. That's it in the report. The only other thing I was going to mention before I hand over for questions is I am conscious that at the last meeting we were asked for a breakdown of how much our time is split between UK staff and non-UK delivery, and I've got that for you now. So of our total hours charged for this audit so far, 70% has been delivered onshore, so with the UK teams, and 30% has been delivered by non-UK teams. And then that's everything from us. So any questions we'll happily receive.
So before we take questions, just I have questions from members. Do you feel you've had sufficient time to read the audit report since it was delivered so late? You do? Just looking around the table, looking online, not getting any. Feel you haven't? Please signal. Okay, so we've had sufficient time. Obviously, you know, you've said yourselves that the delivery of the report was late, and it won't happen again. So I just want that minuted that it was late, and we'd look for a significant improvement in your timing in future. Having said that, I'll open for questions. Councillor Allen, I believe you were first.
Yeah, given that this is the audit for 24-25, why have you included the internal audit inadequate things for 25-26 when they weren't actually within the 24-25 audit timescale?
Thank you. As part of our responsibility, obviously, we are focused on that year, and then we are auditing the numbers for that year, and we look at the arrangements in place for that year. I suppose where something comes to our attention that occurs after the year end, but before we issue our report, we are required to take account of it and consider if that has any impact. With these issues, there is always the risk that actually they could have existed at the time as well, because you didn't have a similar audit in that year which was clean. So therefore, there's a risk that it was at that point. So we have to consider it and think, well, does that give us any cause for concern up until the point we issue the opinion?
Any more questions? I think I can see Councillor Zahariddin online.
Yeah, page 24 of the pack. The response suggests there's a surplus impact of 11,418K and suggests to see page 27, but I can't find anything in page 27 related to that. So am I looking at the right place?
So it's slightly confused by the fact there are 2 pages on each page here. There's 27 of your pack and 27 of the report. So 27 of the report is on page 29 of the pack, and that's the page it's referring to. It's the second audit adjustments page.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
I just want to say there's a typo on page 7 where it's under significant risk. The valuation of land and building, they're the one in building. Yeah, thank you.
We can resolve that and reissue that then.
So, Councillor Zaharuddin online again.
Thank you for sharing the breakdown of the UK and non-UK resources. It's very informative. I'm assuming non-UK resources are based in India from one of those conversations we had in the past. If so, can this factor be now considered during the pricing of your services, given 30% of your services are coming from non-UK territories? I think it's perfectly reasonable for the prices to reflect that as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't set the audit fees, so we don't have any impact on and how that can be impacted by whether we use onshore or offshore staff. That's the fees are set by Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited.
Councillor Zaharuddin, are you happy with that answer?
Not entirely, but this is something we'll think about. I think it feels like perfectly reasonable to relook into it. Again, excuse my ignorance on the process on this front. This is something perhaps we could take it offline and see within our capacity as this committee as well as a local authority what we could do. If there is anything we could do to take this forward and look into. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Just to follow up on that, just remember that 96% of the councils in the country use the PSAA as their audit through the PSAA, and the fees are set by the PSSA. So the individual audit companies which work for the PSAA and actually deliver the service have no input at all on the fees set by the PSAA.
Yeah, I fully appreciate that, but that does not mean we cannot share our findings or thoughts with PSAA. I don't see a reason why we can't, and I don't think there is anything for us to lose here.
Yeah, so one of the duties of this committee is to pursue value for money in our activities, and our external audit fees are very significant. So I think it's reasonable to ask questions about how fees are set, the business operations of suppliers, and how savings might be achieved in future. So I think they're reasonable questions, but I do accept what's been said. We're within a process which is set at a national level, but the questions are still valid. Thanks. Okay, Head of Internal Audit, Sally.
Yes, I just wanted to make the committee aware that KPMG do receive copies of all our audit reports. So when they're assessing the risks, they do have perhaps more information than you would be receiving here in the summaries that you get, and they will be able to identify when things are actually raising, or when we're actually raising risks that have actually straddled a number of years. And so when they would be looking at this, they wouldn't be just sort of necessarily isolating in 1 year, because they would have that knowledge and information on where issues have perhaps been a risk for a number of years.
Stuart, Head of Finance.
Thanks, Chair. Just following up on Councillor Zahradin's point, I wonder if we should look at the pricing mechanism for which we make those reports available to you.
Thank you, Stuart. Share that.
So, is there an answer to that?
I think my answer would be that the powers of an auditor are to be able to request any and all information that they need to complete their work. So I'm not sure that a charging mechanism would be able to be put in place.
Stuart, are you happy with that answer?
As Councillor Zahradin said, it's worth a try.
Yeah, we haven't got anything to lose there, I'm sure.
As the chair has said, yes, I definitely think it's worth a try. It's part of our responsibilities. Okay, thank you. So just summarising, correct my words if I'm using the wrong words, but your report is a vote of confidence in our accounts, our accounting processes, and our accounting team. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
Okay, so I would like to extend my thanks to everybody in the council officers for turning out such a good result from the point of view of the external auditors. Well done. Yeah, if there's no further points, we have to vote. So the recommendation is that the committee receives the year-end report for the financial year ended 31st of March 2025 from the Council External Auditor, KPMG, as represented this evening. The committee authorises the chairman of this committee to sign the final version of the statement of accounts for 24-25 and is necessary to reflect the external auditor's findings that we've just received.
Councillor Allen, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. All those in favour? Thank you. So at this point, I'm going to have to bid a fond farewell to our external auditors, because we are going to exclude members of the public and the press as we move on to an item which is going to be held in the pink, the counter fraud update. So I'm just going to look at the clerk to make sure that we're good to go. Right, good. So formally, I just have to exclude the public and the press. So to consider the following motion, pursuant to section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, and having regard to the public interest, members of the public and the press be excluded from the meeting for consideration of the following item, which involves a likely disclosure of exempt information under the following category of Schedule 12A of the Act. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information.
Councillor Allen, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Yeah, take your time.